Hello, hello, and welcome to the very first episode of the Chris Trube Show. I am your host, Chris Trube, and thank you guys so much for finding us today, for joining us here at the beginning of our journey. As always, here on the CTS, I'll be joined by my good friends and co-hosts, Fierro and Gopher Mike. Gentlemen, welcome to the show, and thank you guys for being a part of this with me.
Glad to be here, sir.
Hey,
hello, how are you?
We're doing all right. I want to start by saying that this really sucks. Originally, we had planned to do a different show today. We didn't have any guests lined up because we wanted this to kind of be our establishing show where you get to meet us, and we'd have liked that, and you're still going to meet us. But this show is about talking to people who are subject matter experts in their field and us talking about current events. And while we're still going to talk about recent events, the show we had lined up today was going to be about the presidential election and how that may have affected the runoff elections in Georgia. We were going to talk about the coronavirus and the vaccine and the response to it. But instead, we're going to talk about one of the most shocking and horrific incidents in modern American history. We are going to talk about the seizure and occupation of the Capitol building in Washington earlier this week. And I want to be 100% clear about what this was. This was domestic terrorism called out by Donald Trump, enacted by supporters of Donald Trump, the man who is supposed to be the leader of the free world. Make no mistake, this group of people carried out this act of sedition at his urging. Now, I know we've all had time to sit and think about it for a few days, but I really want that to sink in. The President of the United States, being unhappy that he lost his re-election, used his supporters to hold the U.S. government hostage. And all this because Donald Trump is refusing, or had refused, at least publicly, to acknowledge that he lost the election. He fed his supporters lies and conspiracy theories, which they really believe to be true. There are congressmen and other accomplices who helped add fuel to this fire by siding with the president over this, giving his claims ridiculous legitimacy. And maybe the most ridiculous thing of all is that this should all be common knowledge. The Constitution and the rule of law is clear. It's been taught in schools for 2 centuries. And it's been law for almost 2.5 centuries. Nowhere in the entire time that I watched that whole thing, and I watched the whole thing unfold. Nowhere in the entire time that I watched that take place did I really see law and order, as it's been practiced in the past, prevail. It was like watching a Twilight Zone episode where the police lined the streets and didn't really do anything. And now 4 people are dead as a result of this. The entire world is stunned by the events that took place, and because of this, we can't not talk about it. So I kind of want to open it back up to you guys, and let's have a quick chat about this, because this is history. This is something that's never happened before. Domestic terrorists occupied the Capitol building.
Well, I do think it has happened before. Obviously not with the Capitol building, but if we remember about the group that took over the Oregon Ranger Station? Do you remember when that happened?
Yes.
And then when all this was happening, we don't want to forget that also, wasn't it the Georgia Senate, or the Pennsylvania Senate, was also surrounded by Trump supporters, and everyone in was had to be evacuated out. So this is, I don't know, man. It's saddening. It's just un-American. It's not what we stand for. It's not our values. It's not who we are. And dude, I was ashamed. I'm an American and I live in the UK. So I was watching it with, my wife and her family and stuff like that. And obviously they don't judge me for that. But I mean, it's just hard to sit there and watch that happen in your country and try to explain it to people, because I couldn't. I just couldn't.
Yeah, I can't explain it.
I couldn't agree more. It, like you said, very, very un-American. And like Chris said, it's the first time that's ever happened. And there's a couple things that are a first time that ever happened. They walked the Confederate flag inside of the U.S. Capitol.
Yeah.
And that's something that didn't even happen during the Civil War. So, I mean, they made history alone there. And it's so disgraceful what they did. And it kind of sucks, you know, calling them Trump supporters. As you guys know, I voted Republican. So, I mean, yeah, technically you can label me a Trump supporter. But at the same time, I think the word domestic terrorist is the better way to describe them for what they did, because there is a big subset of Trump supporters who aren't. But let's be blatant, pieces of shit.
Sure.
You know, the inability to accept the loss is ridiculous. This is the same thing that 4 years ago these people sat back on their couches laughing at the other party for being upset and saying they were complaining and being crybabies and how disgraceful they were, when they just turned around and did the same exact thing but kicked it up a few notches, you know?
Sure.
It's just very sad to see these people go in and smash windows out of our state capitol, or not state capitol.
Yeah, no, I want to stress that this is no longer a partisan political issue. And I want that to be absolutely clear from the get-go. This is not Republicans versus Democrats. These people weren't flying. Okay, they had American flags there, but they weren't flying American. They were flying Trump flags. This is demagoguery. Look, this is an act of terror against the federal government by people who were loyal to an individual, not a nation. That needs to be the distinction, and that needs to be made very, very clear here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they affected both parties. So I believe you're 100% right there. You know, it's not a partisan thing, because everybody was affected by the ignorant acts that they did.
Yeah, they held up the government. They effectively held the federal government up for 6, 7, 8 hours.
That's I think what's most shocking to me. How did that happen? I am never one for conspiracy theorists. Oh, they're in on this or they're in on that. But I don't understand how us three, we're sitting right here. If any one of us was in charge of security of the National Senate on that day, knowing Trump called all his supporters, knowing the kind of person he is, you could almost, we were sitting there watching his speech, and my wife was sitting there playing a little game. Oh, he's going to say this. Oh, he's going to say that. And he literally said everything on her list. And he kept repeating, fraud, stolen. We're going to march to the Capitol building.
Yeah.
Where was security? Where was the police? Where was the National Guard before this? That should have been one of the most secure buildings on January 6th. And they just strolled in there like there was, a couple security guards at the door?
Yeah. It was like the Washington Mall.
That was just, I mean, people have to be fired. That was just terrible.
Well, yeah, and, we'll get to that here shortly. But, I mean, if you want to ask, how does this happen, I think the answer is right in front of us. We know how it happened. We saw it on TV. We saw the whole thing on TV. This is not good. This is not going to end well for any of the individuals, for any of the participants, for anyone who egged it on, for anyone who still supports this crap. It just isn't going to end well for you. We can sit and take a look at the timeline of events to kind of help break this thing down a little bit, and I think maybe that's the best place to start. Knowing what we know about everything that led up to that point. In other words, We know, we're going to skip a lot of the 4 years because we don't need to rehash that, right? But let's start with January 6th at 10 a.m. Now, January 6th was the day they were supposed to certify the Electoral College. At 10 a.m., Rudy Giuliani told a pro-Trump rally crowd in D.C. that he would be willing to stake his reputation on the fact that there was election fraud, which frankly was never proven. He goes on to say that people will go to jail for fraudulent election behavior. I wonder if he means them. And he asks for a trial by combat. And he didn't even just say, loosely, oh, let's have a trial by... He growled it. Like he shook his fist in the air. He riled him up.
Yeah, so that's a blatant call to arms, practically what he did there.
Yeah.
He went in with the intention of stoking a fire with his words.
Correctamundo.
He knew what he was doing. They all knew what they were doing, and for them to play dumb, and act like they have innocence behind what they were saying, he literally called for trial by fire, as you said there. So,
Yeah.
I mean, why isn't he put in handcuffs right now? Why aren't they going after him?
We'll get to
it's
that.
sad.
We'll get to that. It wasn't long thereafter. I think it was about noonish. And by the way, folks, my timeline is going to be on guesstimate on averages. I'm not going to give you, 10:14 p.m. 12 p.m., about noonish, Donald Trump announced that he wants his VP, Mike Pence, to, and I quote, do the right thing, saying that Pence is going to, and I quote, have to come through for us. He also stated that if Pence did not do the right thing, that he knows everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to make their voices heard, and he told them that he would be out there with them.
Yeah, we've seen him out there, huh? Big words, but you hide.
He left as soon as it was over. Hopped into his little ride and left. It was pathetic.
Yeah.
To blatantly throw your vice president in front of the fire there too,
Trump is dude, he's a mobster.
Yeah.
He literally lays down threats like a mobster.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know what he means, but in a court of law, it's going to be really hard to prove what he means, even though everybody knows what he means.
Gives
And
a whole new term to Teflon Don, doesn't it?
I mean, everyone says he's stupid, but I mean, he can throw down threats like the best of them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he might have bitten off a little more than he can chew this time. Being responsible for mounting an insurrection against the U.S. government is a pretty hefty offense. So 1 p.m., Vice President Mike Pence states before the Senate that it is his duty to uphold his oath to defend the Constitution, and that he could not give the president what he wants. He cites that the Constitution does not allow him to claim unilateral authority to determine which electoral college votes count and which ones do not. He also states that he had to, and I quote here, carefully study the Constitution in order to come to this conclusion. Now tell me this. Most of those politicians in there are constitutional lawyers, are they not?
They are.
They are.
How the fuck do you need to study? Pardon my French, but how the fuck do you need to study something that you've worked with your entire life?
You don't. That's lip service is all it is.
Yeah, he knew he couldn't do anything.
Of course he did.
He had to say something that made it seem, like his hands were tied.
Yeah.
Which technically they were. And he did his job. Yeah. He followed the Constitution how he was supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
And for it, you had Trump supporters running through the halls wanting to execute Mike Pence. That's where we're at now.
Sure, but that's what I mean. What are the consequences of that being the case? I mean, what are the consequences there?
For him upholding the Constitution?
No, for him to say, well, to waffle for so long. Well, sir, oh, Mr. Trump, you're such a great person. Ho, 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 ho. For him to kiss his ass for 4 years straight And then on the last possible day, at the last possible minute, here's Mike fucking Pence to the rescue. I don't buy that shit.
Well,
Yeah.
it's like people that are going to get fired. Yeah.
Yeah.
You take it from your boss for fucking years, and then on the way out, fuck you, whatever. So Mike Pence knows he's on his way out. And
Yeah.
dude, Trump threw Pence under the bus hard.
He did.
And
I
backed it up.
And I am surprised that Trump or Pence isn't ever, the reports came out, Pence, it's as angry as we've ever seen him. Well, how? Did he like shake his head? Or that Trump?
Right. Right. He shook his fist in anger. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, that guy he's in a shitty situation. Could you imagine being stuck in that position? I mean, at the end of the day, he did the right thing, but I can kind of see what he's doing, trying to play the neutral. He's walking a thin neutral line there, as the vice president to this guy. And then I think John hit it on the head as the person about to get fired. He can finally just throw up the middle finger and say, I'm sick of your shit, buddy.
Sure. Except for the fact that, and again, we'll talk about this a little bit, but let's say that he does wind up getting censured or impeached, or somebody invokes Article 25 on him, which we'll talk about. But then Mike Pence becomes president. So he has to watch out for his own self-interest here too,
A whole week and a half.
Yeah. Pope for a day. Anyways, so this all happened in the first 3 hours on the 6th. And just about 2:00, right, when the Senate is convening to put the results of the Electoral College out, Mitch McConnell objects to reject the results of the election, citing potential irreparable damage to our republic. And it wasn't long thereafter, probably about 15, maybe 20 minutes or so later, that the Capitol Police alerted the congressional staff that no entry or exit is permitted at all Capitol buildings due to an external security threat, and the House and the Senate go into a recess shortly thereafter. So they knew. They could see it.
And Mitch McConnell's not wrong as far as irreparable damage. I mean,
No, he's not.
Could you imagine the Senate and the House turning to the American citizens and saying, "Oh, we fucked up this election. We got to do this again."
Well, I think what he was doing was he was objecting to reject the results of the election, meaning he did not want there to be objections.
Exactly, which means don't say that there was a mistake or this,
Right,
that, or the other
right,
thing. Basically, in a roundabout way, is if there was objections and they went through, the election would have got tossed, correct? And in the history of America, how do you can't do that? You can't. How do you get people to trust the process? You can't trust the process after that. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's the whole argument. The whole argument here is it's unconstitutional. I think he was more or less trying to preemptively discourage people like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley from coming out and saying, "Oh, well, people in Pennsylvania and people in Texas think this is all a sham, so we're going to have to put a committee together and look at this to see if there were any fraud."
Yeah, so in a nice way, he was basically saying, "Hey, you guys in the back, sit down and shut up, and let's get this done."
More or less. And I knew that wouldn't have been the case. But, to his credit, and I hate to give Moscow Mitch any credit here, but, he did try, albeit not very hard, but he tried. And it wasn't shortly thereafter, I think it was about 2:30-ish, where Donald Trump tweets that Mike Pence did not have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution. And I quote that. Even though that's exactly what he was doing, Mike Pence, believe it or not, by the letter of the law.
Well, one thing I just want to harp on real quick when you first brought up the current timeline was when the police told him, no one could come in or out because we have an external threat.
Yeah.
Well, it takes the military around 10 minutes to mobilize and surround the White House. Why were no extra police called? The National Guard, the military, anybody? When they saw that many people coming and crossing the barricades onto the grounds, which is trespassing.
Yeah.
What the hell happened? If we're going to do like an investigation and form a committee, that's one that needs to be formed. What happened? At that point, everyone should have been called. Everyone should have been there. But instead, I assume we'll talk about it later, but they broke in and it took over 2 hours for anyone to even call the National Guard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so basically the question is, why was it allowed to happen?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, without going into too many details right this very second, there have been some reports that state, and I don't know how accurate they are, but there have been some reports that have stated that they weren't able to contact the National Guard, that they were being discouraged from contacting the National Guard. Again, I don't know how true that is. I don't want to say that for a fact. I kind of want to stick to facts here, but I'll let you guys come to your own conclusions on that.
Well, one fact is the governor of Maryland came out and said that he offered multiple times to send in the Maryland National Guard and was told no.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not speculation. That's a fact.
Right. Yeah.
So within it being stormed, within 10 minutes, he called and said, hey, do you want us to send a National Guard? And I'm not sure who he talked to or who was in charge at the time. They said no. Why?
Yeah. Good question. And I'm sure we'll get the answer to him.
We're talking about Washington, D.C. here, the capital of the United States. You know as well as I do how much security is in that city alone, how much you can't do in that city. And literally every single one of those agencies was put on standby and sat back and watched that happen. I don't know if it was ordered. I don't know what happened there. But, I mean, you got Secret Service there. You got military there.
Yeah.
National.
FBI, Homeland Security.
Yeah, exactly. CIA.
The Pentagon. Everybody's there.
Capitol Police, there. Maryland Police.
Yeah. I mean, who else can you walk in there that could protect people? You know, everybody was there. You could have thrown everything at the wall and nothing.
I am, I guess, proud of the fact that nothing worse happened. I will give an immense amount of respect to the police that were there. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there were some casualties, but way less than I thought there would be. I mean, they discovered pipe bombs and Molotov cocktails and stuff that the protesters were carrying in that thankfully they didn't get to use.
Which is a whole other fucking shit show.
I mean, the police that were in that building did as good a job as they could. And I think they should be commended for the job that they did. But they should have never had to do that job. It should have never got to that point.
No, I agree.
Yeah, why were protesters allowed to even get in the vicinity of that area with weapons, with IEDs, you know?
Well,
sure.
Did you see the one video of the black cop that was running up the stairs and that one protester kept chasing him and he was trying to beat him off with his little baton? He had you can Google it. It's, but he had, his hand on his gun the whole time. And he showed an immense amount of restraint from not pulling that out and just laying out those protesters because they kept advancing and he kept telling them no. He had his little baton out and, I guess cheers to that guy for not turning into a murder scene, which he was absolutely under law 100% allowed to do. They were trespassing, not listening to him. And I can imagine he was afraid for his life.
Oh, wouldn't you be? Could you imagine being in that situation?
I would be too. And I want to reiterate, they were not fucking protesters. They were terrorists.
Yes. And on top of it, they're citizens of the United States. So
domestic terrorists.
You're a law enforcement agent sitting there looking at a citizen of the same country you live in. I mean, you could have a seven ways from Kevin Bacon connection to that person. I mean, That's as close to a Civil War reenactment as you'll ever
Yeah.
seen. That's
I
Americans
don't think
fighting
I've ever
Americans.
played that. I don't think I've ever played that game. What did you call it?
7 degrees.
Seven
Kevin Bacon.
shades of Kevin Bacon. I think it's 6 degrees of bacon. I think that's
Yeah.
the game.
I'm just
But I
saying,
mean, it's just that close of a relation that
Yeah.
I mean, these
No, I hear
military
you.
and it's sad.
people, they see the white guy and they see the pretty blonde girl or whatever, and they don't make the same connection. But for me, while this was far less deadlier, there's no difference between the 9/11 terrorists and these terrorists that stormed the building.
Correct.
I understand everyone's really upset about the ex-Air Force, she was in the Air Force for 14 years, and she was one of the people that stormed, and unfortunately one of the people that died. And I feel bad for her family that they lost a daughter, but it's hard.
Shouldn't have been there.
A terrorist was killed.
Yeah.
A terrorist was killed.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
that's, and I'm sorry, I don't feel worse about it. Like I said, the cop showed an immense amount of restraint. She was told multiple times to back up. And because she was a white woman, maybe she assumed that wouldn't happen. But unfortunately, that happened.
Yeah, it did happen. And here's the thing. I want to add this to the conversation really quick. Just because someone is a veteran or someone has served in the military doesn't give them cause to be out there like that. We shouldn't deify them in the first place, right? I mean, that's a whole nother show for a whole nother day, my feelings on this deification of the military and how that has, helped, has contributed to the scenario and the situation that we find ourselves in. But that's neither here nor there. Just because you serve doesn't mean you're some great person, you're some fucking hero.
Let me put it this way. Let's take government out of it. Let's take everything out of it that was there, and let's just call this a place of an employment. The Capitol. That's what I'm going to call the Capitol right now, is a place of employment. And now let's say we're here in whatever state you're in, and you get a group of 20 of your buddies together, and you want to go take over the local Home Depot because you don't like how they're hiring people. So you and your little group of comrades roll up to this Home Depot, and you kick in the front door. You take control. Everybody there is scared because they don't know what's happening, and you stop them from doing your job. What's going to happen to you and your group of your buddies within, I don't know, say a half hour of you walking through that door and smashing it?
You're getting some free 2x4s?
You're going to be you're going to be on a one-way trip to the local jail is where you're going to be.
You're not getting free 2x4s. You're getting free bars.
Well, do you remember when they had that Facebook thing where all those people were supposed to Naruto charge or whatever the hell it's called? Area 51?
Area 51, yeah.
Oh,
you remember how fast that shit was put down?
Oh, yeah.
What the hell? Again, what happened here? I can't wrap my head around how they got that far and how all this happened when all these other prior examples, shit was shut down in minutes.
I think that when this is all said and done, and when we see the results of this come out for what they are, we're going to be both shocked and not shocked at the same fucking time to learn why the events transpired in the way that they did.
Well, I have one question. I mean, Biden's brought it up. Other Democrats have brought it up. Do you feel there would have been more bloodshed if this was a Black Lives Matter protest that tried to storm the Capitol?
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Definitely. And that's part of what makes me so freaking mad about this. There was never such a more blatant display of inequity before the law as I saw that day. Never so much more a blatant disrespect for human life in the sense that we treat people differently based on the color of their frickin' skin.
That's why, the Air Force, the sergeant in the Air Force, every news article that reported her death, nothing ever said about her being in the protest or her being a terrorist.
Right.
It was always, she got caught up with the pro-Trump supporters. And I'm like, she didn't die on the launch. She died inside the building on the 3rd floor trying to climb over a barricade.
Yep.
What? I don't know. It pisses me off.
No, it does. It pisses this whole thing pisses me off, and it should piss everybody off.
You have every right to be pissed off. It was an epic failure laid out at the feet of the American and world audience. We look like complete fucking assholes to the rest of the world right now, as if we already didn't. It shows how spoiled we are. It shows how entitled we are as Americans.
Yeah. When I was a kid, the phrase they used was American exceptionalism.
American exceptionalism.
Yeah. Yeah. American exceptionalism.
I think Mike said it earlier, when Trump won and all the Democrats were pissed off and, they were protesting in the streets.
Yeah.
It never got this bad.
No.
Never.
And so they never again, at least this core of Trump people, never again get to be taken seriously when they post their little memes on social media about how this never would have happened if we'd have won or we'd have lost. That's all bullshit. Bullshit.
Too late now.
Yeah. So anyways, we kind of skipped ahead a little bit. The timeline, let's talk about it again, because around 3 o'clock or so, was it 3 o'clock? 3 o'clock, Washington, D.C. mayor issued a 12-hour citywide curfew beginning at 6 p.m. Now, this plays into the story later, and we'll get there when we get there. At that time, congressmen are also being told to wear gas masks as the rioting begins. The U.S. Capitol is officially breached by terrorists as Congress and staff members are evacuated from the building. Tear gas is deployed in the rotunda, and as we mentioned earlier, a woman is shot in the chest inside the building. At 3:30, the National Guard is mobilized, and at 4 p.m., President-elect Biden calls on Trump to end what he calls an insurrection. Shortly thereafter, Trump offers a social media video where he tells the protesters to go home, but also cites that the election was stolen from him, repeating again conspiracy theories and lies in the face of certain danger.
Let's not forget how he told them he loves them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, he validated what they were doing.
Absolutely.
Like John said earlier, he knows how to speak. He's not a dumb guy. He can support them and tell them how good of a job they are doing without incriminating himself. And it's a talent he has. He's flat out in the public eye supporting everything that they did without saying that. They know what he's saying to them. Mm-hmm. And it just gets them more riled up. And again, it's just every 2 hours, this guy's taking the kerosene and dumping it in the lamp and saying, oh, look at that fire grow.
Yeah. I mean, it was the worst fucking come out, try and calm him speech he could have. He basically came out and said, I'm sorry this happened, but it's your fault.
Yeah. Isn't that great?
This man has no moral bones in his body. And like Mr. Dulong said, dude, Trump it's really hard for me to wrap my mind around the thought process that this man possesses, because he obviously gives no shits about anyone but himself.
Yeah.
And you're only close to him as long as you're useful to him. And the moment you're not useful, dude, we've seen it throughout the 4 years. He's firing people, replacing people, threw Pence under the bus because he couldn't do what the Constitution doesn't allow him to do.
Yeah.
People worship this guy, and I can't. It is so hard for me to wrap my head around that. I've always said before, I knew why he got elected, because people were tired of politicians. Sure. They were tired of the lies and the same bullshit.
Yep.
I'm sorry. I am too. But if given the choice between him and the same old bullshit, dude, just give me the same old bullshit. Because at least I can somewhat hold my head in pride and say, you know what, I'm an American.
Yeah. Better the devil you know than the devil you don't.
Yeah.
At least the same old bullshit isn't as dangerous.
Now we know the devil we don't.
Correct.
And he's far worse than the one we used to know.
Correctamundo. 5:30-ish, terrorists now occupy the Capitol offices and the floor of the House and the Senate. Most of those idiots taking selfies and pictures of them having committed acts of treason and terror and vandalism on American federal soil, basically. 6 p.m., it's reported that the woman who was shot has died, and she becomes the first casualty of this occupation, of this illegal siege. 7 p.m., Twitter suspends Donald Trump's account, citing falsehoods. Twitter does so in order to help quell the situation, not allowing him to make further public commentary. And this is going to be maybe the only speculative part that I want to bring up today is I don't know that a public company like Twitter is going to shut his account down without what I would consider to be just or good cause. I don't wonder if somebody in the White House or on the White House staff didn't nudge Twitter in the right direction in this instance by telling them, look, you better shut his Twitter down because we don't have any way to control him.
Well, the timeline the one thing I want to bring up at the 5:30 timeline where they were taking pictures. Dude, they were taking pictures with the officers.
Yeah.
The police were taking selfies with not the protesters, the terrorists.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, like I mentioned before, what a great job a lot of the police that were on the ground did that day. They're heroes. They deserve to be praised.
Yep.
But these ones, they need to lose their job.
It's a dereliction of duty.
Yeah.
They didn't do their job. You know, I don't care who you support on that side of the spectrum, whether they, you know, if they are on the side of the terrorists and they are Trump supporters, they have a job to do. And they laid down and didn't do it. If you were taking a selfie with these people, you should be fired and you should be put in jail. They should be taking these photos and using all this great technology we have. Find out who every last one of those people are, and they need to be put on trial.
Yeah.
I mean, if this was a different situation, if it was a foreign terror attack on our country, we would be not stopping until we knew the identity of every last person involved.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It reminds me of a what do they call it, a meme that I saw. If the United States saw what was happening in the United States would deploy the United States military to liberate the United States and bring, you know, justice and freedom to the United States. It didn't happen that way.
And while Twitter let him back, I think Facebook and Instagram have banned him indefinitely, right? Until
they banned him until he's done
happens?
with this. Yeah, they banned him until they're done. But yeah, God. And so this is the part that really kind of irritates me a little bit. They found bombs and IEDs and all sorts of nasty things at both the DNC and the RNC headquarters. Did they find one? And I missed my notes here, but did they say they found one in the Capitol building itself?
Yeah, pipe
bombs.
Pipe
bombs.
100%. There's even pictures and stuff. They found, and then they found like an ice chest cooler filled with Molotov cocktails.
Yeah,
and all that
I have that on my notes too. Yeah,
and long rifles. Yeah,
long rifles. Yeah.
Oh, dude, most of them had guns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's why again, so much restraint was shown by the cops. You know, that were inside that building.
Restraint that would not have been shown to them if they were Black Lives Matter.
No.
And you know, this isn't the first time this has happened with these people. The state I live in, they walked into our Capitol carrying firearms, and it was allowed to happen. You know, so I mean, it for it to continue to happen, it's just absolutely disgusting.
And like I said, I am no way. You know, when I say, oh, if it was Black Lives Matter, it would have been differently. I am in no way saying that I support, you know, any of the stuff, any of the riots and stuff that happened during the Black Lives Matter protests. Those people should also be thrown in jail, you know. But
I agree.
The fact that these armed men with bombs, Molotov cocktails, weapons, knives, guns, and only one person was shot in the building? Really?
Yeah.
I mean, you had that one guy that got choked out for selling loose cigarettes.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
George
at some
Floyd?
point,
Yeah.
yeah, at some point, the inequity is it makes you laugh because it's so sad.
Yeah. And again, we're not laughing because this is funny, ha ha. We're laughing because this is ridiculous.
It's just a spit in the face to the people. It, it really is to everybody. It shows the imbalance. It shows who's favored. It,
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Anyways,
like Chris
yeah.
said, we shouldn't, make deities of people that were in the military. But the simple fact is, thousands of people in the military died, in wars and stuff, defending your right to peaceful protest. They did not die so that you could storm the Senate building and act like an asshole and look for, Democrats or Mike Pence or something to murder.
so
You are a terrorist.
yeah,
And if you believe that was right, you're a terrorist.
when you join the military, any branch, you take an oath to
Yep.
just like all these other people to protect, serve, uphold the Constitution. They broke their oath. They may not be
from all
active
enemies,
military.
from all enemies, foreign and domestic. I know, I said it many times.
Yeah, see? So I mean, you should still abide by that oath,
Yeah. Yeah. Or else the oath isn't worth the shit.
Yeah. They
Hell,
just threw it out the window.
Since we've gone to school, we've, stood up in the morning and said the Pledge of Allegiance. That doesn't mean shit right now.
No.
None of those people cared.
No. Liberty
They
and
saw
justice for all.
their orange god was being slighted, and that means
Yep.
they're being slighted. So they decided to do something dumb. Unfortunately, one person paid for it with their lives.
Correct. This should be, and I mean, we're not quite done with it yet, but I just want to, this should be the most cautionary tale against unlimited power that I can think of to use as an example in modern times, at least in my lifetime.
I agree. None of us have seen anything like this in our lifetime. I mean,
So-
the closest thing to it would have been in the 40s with World War II.
Yeah.
So let's get back on track with the timeline. We don't have much more to go here, but I think that it's worth noting because this is actually the part that pissed me off the most. The rest of it was pretty scary and uncertain, but when they actually got back onto the floor, 7:30, congressional lawmakers are escorted back to their chambers after law enforcement officials have taken back the building. At 8 p.m., Mike Pence reconvenes the Senate, saying, "Let's get back to work." Mitch McConnell then states that Congress will not be kept out of the chambers by mobs, thugs, or threats, even though that's exactly what just happened. He then directly lays blame on President Trump for the seizure of the Capitol building by his supporters. And of course, that goes round and round. 10 p.m., and this is where things get really hot for me. Senator Josh Hawley says he is going forward with his objection to the Electoral College results in Pennsylvania, stating falsely that the Senate was designed to hear such arguments during the certification process. This idiot, this Josh Hawley moron, who deserves all of your rotten tomatoes and every ounce of your ire, held up the certification process so that he could get cool points with Uncle Donnie supporters. Unbelievable. Ridiculous.
He was the one that was throwing up the fist on the way into the supporters to show their support. I mean, this dude, I'm sorry, but him, Ted Cruz, the fucking how many representatives in the House, those people need to not serve anymore.
They're right. Yeah, you're right. There were 6. The Senate
overwhelmingly
turned aside. 6 senators, yes.
But I was talking about all the ones in the House of Representatives.
Oh, yeah.
50 some odd of them.
Yeah.
I think there was supposed to be 90 or over 100 before the siege, and then after the siege, they dropped down to about 53. But
still,
after seeing that, after knowing what caused that, and to continue on with this lie, they need to be out.
They need to be stripped of their seats. They proved right there that they can't justly do their job. They can't be unbiased in their position in which they should be you know, and granted they are part of parties, but they're all there to work together. You know,
They were all Republicans, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Every single one of them were Republicans.
And again, I'm not saying every Republican is like that.
No,
No,
I'm
they're
not.
not, because Mitch
I have-
McConnell,
yeah.
he clearly called him out on it, and he's a
I
Republican
gained
leader.
some respect for Moscow Mitch that I didn't have before. I've over the last couple
Moscow.
years, I've gained a lot of respect for Mitt Romney. Listen, I have no problems with
Yeah.
Republicans. You know, conservative values, fiscal
Sure.
reform, stuff like that.
Sure.
Donald Trump supporters, these supporters, and the senators and the representatives that perpetuated this lie and kept it going after what they saw, they're not Republicans.
No.
No,
They do not do their duty to serve the people. I'm
They're
sorry.
extremists.
When you're in the government, you are meant to serve the people.
Mm-hmm.
And what they did was a farce, and it was
They don't serve the
embarrassing.
people.
And they put their own political futures ahead of representing the people that voted them into those spots.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, you're talking at a base level. It should be common knowledge that a lot of these politicians don't actually have any intention of supporting the people. They follow the money. They follow the money trail. So business and industry and lobbyists and special interest groups, those are the ones who are actually making the suggestions to said lawmakers. Hey, you know what?
But even, you know, like the Republic, dude, both sides, Democrats and Republicans, they're all greedy little weasels or whatever.
Yep.
But at some point, you have to have some sort of moral compass. And there was plenty of Republican senators and representatives that had enough of moral compass to say, I can't stand behind this. This is wrong. Trump is evil. He is a terrible leader. He should never be president. And you know what? They stood by their morals at least this one time and said, I can't do that. Enough is enough. And then we had people like fucking Josh and Ted Cruz that they have no moral compass.
You know who really, I shouldn't say this was a surprise at all, because it wasn't. It wasn't a surprise. But at the same time, it was just another big FU. Lindsey Graham. This fucking idiot. He stands up there and goes, I think it was a uniquely bad idea to delay this election. Blah, blah, blah. He cracks poorly timed remarks, which makes some people on the floor chuckle. And the only thing that I could think of at that point was somebody died in the building that you're cracking fucking jokes in.
Yeah.
Fucking idiot. Fucking idiot.
I don't like people like Graham because before Trump was president, he was a staunch opponent of Trump.
Yeah.
There's plenty of interviews where him saying, dude, if Trump gets in, this is going to be terrible.
Yeah.
All these bad things are going to happen. Trump gets elected, and just like Ted Cruz, they start kissing Trump's ass for almost 4 years. So I'm sorry, Lindsey Graham. I know you tried to do the right thing at the end, but you don't get credit for her after 4 years of bullshit.
Nope. None.
Yeah, all they're doing is playing the fucking popularity card, trying to get something that they want slid into a bill somewhere down the line. You know, they're just gonna lip service and kiss his ass. They're all out for their own victories.
Right, and that should be the banner that is hung across this entire thing. If there was anything that you saw that you could come away with, a bottom line to this whole thing, none of these assholes over there have your best interest in mind. They only care about doing for them. What can you do for me today? What can you do for me tomorrow? That's it. That's it. That's it. Joe Biden's election was not certified until 3:30 in the fucking morning. 3:30 in the morning. Even after the delay, it took them until 3:30 in the morning to do something. It's just ridiculous. It's childish, and this is not how a republic should represent its people. It just isn't. It just isn't.
And I still feel like it was slightly planned. I mean, they made it to Arizona. They go in alphabetical order, for Christ's sakes. They made it to Arizona when the Capitol was stormed and taken over. So, I mean, at that point, what do you got? 15 minutes into the thing, and that's as far as you got, you know?
Yeah.
That chamber should have never been breached. in the first place, let
I'm
alone
kinda-
build it.
That's yeah.
I don't know if interested is the right word to use, but I'm kind of interested in seeing what happens to the Republican Party because I feel it's fractured now more than ever. I mean, they used to always stand against the Democrats, and that was like their thing. But now, I mean, me myself, dude, I voted for Republicans. I voted for Democrats. I always vote for whoever I think is the best person for the job, regardless of what party they are.
Yeah.
But the Democrats have their own issue with the super right wing progressive liberal. But now, the Republicans, I feel that split's even larger now after the 6th,
Yeah.
and it's just it's a travesty that this had to happen.
Well,
Yeah,
it just shows the fracture through, like you said, through the Republican Party. They have literally turned into Republicans and extremists. They're call them radical Republicans if you want. It's no different than what we see in other parts of the world with parties, where there's a good side of a party somewhere else, and then there's the radical side, and that's exactly what they're developing right now.
Do you know what I called it? I called it, this is America's ISIS.
Yep. And that's where I was getting without actually saying the name.
I'll say it.
You basically just witnessed the birth of a terrorist organization, because they're not going to go away, and it's going to keep going.
Yep.
I think what's sad for me is I didn't think this was a possibility 4 years ago. Like, I knew there were some people that thought like this, but they didn't have, that lightning rod to unite them the way that Trump has. And I mean, let's be honest, if you're going to get one fucking lightning rod, you can't get one bigger than the president of the United States of America.
Right.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, dude, Trump's legacy is going to go well beyond these 4 years, because he is the reason this is the size that it is. And I'm actually worried going forward, because like Mike just said, this isn't the last you're going to hear of him.
No. You should be worried, because guess what, folks? They just lit the wick. It's going to keep going. You haven't seen the end. And it's sad to say, but it's only going to get worse and worse. And they need to put it in check. They need to stop it.
Well, I'll tell you, that kind of leads me into this next segue for this last bit here, because there's only one real good way to do that, and that is to punish the guy who incited this. We're talking about invoking the 25th Amendment. We're talking about censorship, and none of it is going to happen. It's not going to happen. Will he be prosecuted? Will he go punished at all? Do you think he'll go punished at all for this?
I highly doubt it.
And if he does, he'll just get pardoned. Am I correct in that assumption?
Well, I would say no, only because the only way he would get pardoned is if Pence pardoned him and Donald Trump stepped down.
Sure.
Donald Trump,
Sure.
he has said he can pardon himself. Most constitutional lawyers disagree, but there is a little gray area in the Constitution, and I'm not well versed enough to say one way or another if he can't, but I'm going to lean towards the majority which says he can't.
Sure.
But assuming the inauguration goes off without a hitch, Biden becomes president, there is zero chance that if Donnie is actually found guilty of anything, that I believe Biden would ever pardon Trump.
No, I don't think Biden would pardon him, but I would not put it past the next Republican president to do so.
My opinion is nothing's going to happen to the guy.
Well, that's what I think too.
When's he going to Biden going to office? The 20th?
Yeah.
Today is what, the 8th?
12 days.
Yeah. We're
12 days from now, Biden walks into the office.
That's my New Year's countdown.
And we already had a giant embarrassment on American soil for the whole world to see. The way I see it going is they are going to want to brush this under the rug so fast. And we're fucking vulnerable. We're fighting amongst ourselves right now, and they need to realize that. And as bad as it is to say that, if they do brush it under the rug, it'd probably be a little bit helpful for us to get back on track. Go after the guy down the road. If we invoke the 25th and kick him out of office, then we just look even stupider.
Sure.
We put him there.
That's not going to happen.
We put him there, and 12 days before he's supposed to be out of there, we pull him out.
No, and you're right. You're right. We're not doing anything like that. 25th Amendment isn't going to get done. I know the Democrats called for it. Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi called for that to happen. That's not going to happen.
They'll
If it
impeach
was
him
going
again.
to, it should have happened right then and there if it was going to happen.
Oh,
Well,
I
I
agree.
do feel he's going to be impeached again because
Probably.
he has been impeached. To be impeached, it just has to pass the House. Now,
Sure.
for the impeachment to go through, that's where the Senate comes in, and unfortunately, A, the Senate's still Republican, and B, there's just not enough time. So I think if the 25th isn't used, which we all agree it's probably not, he will be impeached. Nothing will come of it. He'll leave, and we'll all try and forget.
Yeah. Which is equal to no punishment. He's not going to get punished for it.
Right.
Well, he will be the first ever president to be impeached twice.
Good Lord. Yeah.
The severity of this crime is huge. It's practically treason. And let me put it this: it is treason. And
Okay.
let me throw this name out there: a person named Edward Snowden. He told the world that the NSA listens to us. Whoop-de-doo. And where is he? He's hiding from the U.S. government because they want his head on a fucking stake. This guy, our president, led a charge and took over the Capitol. Totally stopped our democracy from running. And he's sitting in the White House still.
Yep.
I mean, look, the difference there. I mean, don't get me wrong. Nobody should have did any of that. But Snowden, all he did was say, "Hey, by the way, this is what they're doing, people. It's true." And that's all he did. And he is literally hiding for his life.
I got to be honest with you guys both. I know we had to do this show, and I'm thankful that we did, and we outlined everything. I don't know about you guys. I'm just exhausted. I'm exhausted from all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I've been exhausted for 4 years.
Well, yeah, we've all been exhausted for a long time. But especially now.
Yeah, this is the icing on the cake, breaking the camel's back, whatever kind of euphemism you want to use. But this is pretty much the worst possible way it could have ended.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
And to be quite frank, I'm scared. I don't know what the future holds. I got kids I'm sending into that future.
Yeah.
This is what Americans get for electing a fucking TV personality.
Yeah.
We have seen what this guy is over the years. You have heard the stories. You've seen him tweet forever. You knew what you were getting.
Yeah.
And actually,
right.
I will say we were wrong. We thought we knew what we were getting, and we were getting far worse than we thought.
Yeah.
I guess shame on us as Americans. We put him there, right?
Well, you did.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah. I mean, as Americans as a whole, they put him in there. And I guess they got to taste their own medicine. And unfortunately, there's a large percentage of it that thought that was right. And, that shame on them. You're a piece of shit.
God. Are there any, I know that I'm looking at the clock and I know that we're a little bit, long here. We're almost ready to wrap this thing up. I want to tell our audience that I sincerely hope that I never have to dedicate an entire show to something like this again, especially not, a show as important as our first show, let alone our second, third, or fourth. I want to tell you that the next episodes of CTS are going to be much, much happier, cheerful. Yeah, maybe cheerful. We want to talk to subject matter experts about how they operate, what they do for a living, how they get through their daily lives. I want this to be a show where it's like sitting down with your friends, cracking open a beer, and just shooting the shit. And I feel like we accomplished that today, but at the same time, I just feel dirty.
It's a dark subject matter.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. I feel gross.
Honestly, Chris, I'm glad that we dedicated our first episode to this. I mean, it's kind of a shame that our first episode had to be dedicated to this, but I'm glad it was, because this should be used as a learning experience for everybody. Everybody should have watched this and had their eyes opened at how fast. I mean, if that would have went worse than it did, you could lose everything that you have and that you take for granted in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
If if that would have just
Mike.
kept going, and I hope everybody learns something from it, and I hope that we can make some changes down the road, because this isn't fair for future Americans.
No, and you're absolutely right, and I thank you for that, Mike.
I never want to end anything on a down note, but if history recently over the last, 10, 15 years has taught me anything, is a couple weeks down the road, we'll send out some thoughts and prayers and forget it ever happened, because that seems to be what we do.
Yeah.
So while I hope things change, and let me say, Democrat or Republican, dude, I love everybody. I don't care who you voted for. But to anyone that thought this was right, to anyone that actually went there and partook in this event, you're a terrorist.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. And I'm sorry.
Yeah. Nope. You're absolutely
No
right.
reason to apologize.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to bring this episode of CTS to a close. Thank you guys so much for indulging us, for listening to us. If you would be so kind, please tune in next week when we have a regular guest and a regular show. I promise it's going to be great. We are going to be talking to a mutual friend of ours who is a cancer survivor, and it is the absolute perfect second show for us to have, because it's going to be an uplifting and happy and joyous story as opposed to this fucking crap. If you like what you hear, please give us a little bit of your time. Share some love with some likes, stars, high fives, whatever you got, and make sure you hurl your fist right through that subscribe button. And I think that's it. Do you guys have anything else you want to add?
God bless America.
Let's make this year better, people. Let's make this year better.
I agree. All right, everybody. For Gopher Mike, for Fierro, this is me, CT, saying see ya. Thanks for tuning in.